Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. A lot of executive moves from the president this week. Of course, centered around the deployment of the National Guard and the impact it's having on D.C. and where, if and where, he may deploy the National Guard again, like Chicago, which we've discussed at great length. But going back to D.C., yesterday he announced this.
Anybody murders something in the Capitol, capital punishment, capital punishment. If somebody kills somebody in the Capitol, Washington, D.C., we're going to be seeking the death penalty. And that's a very strong preventative. And everybody that's heard it agrees with it. I don't know if we're ready for it in this country, but we have it. It is. We have no choice. So in D.C. and Washington, states are going to have to make their own decision. But if somebody kills somebody, like you could have been killed, very lucky you didn't get killed, it's the death penalty. Okay.
Okay. I don't know. Are we ready for it in this country? I think half the states have the death penalty for particular crimes, for capital crimes. Yeah, I think we're ready for it. Some of the other moves we're ready for too. Defunding cities and states that have no cash bail programs, like Chicago and all of Illinois, like Washington, D.C., like New York. Although, as I said the other day, you're defunding the same places for having sanctuary city and state policies. I mean, I don't know how many times you can defund them, but I like the attitude. I like the spotlight it puts on terrible policies like no cash bail, the Pritzker Purge law in Illinois. Some of the other moves, I think a little bit more controversial. Maybe there's a trolling aspect to this, but the flag burning EO seems like that's going to be tough to prosecute per the Supreme Court's Texas v. Johnson decision. But here was Trump explaining it.
All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason, which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You could do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. But when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy. In a way, both ways. There are some that are going crazy for doing it. There are others that are angry about them doing it. Do you want to discuss that?
Sure. So what the executive order does, sir, it charges your Department of Justice with investigating instances of flag burning, and then where there's evidence of criminal activity, where prosecution wouldn't fall afoul of the First Amendment, and instructs the Department of Justice to prosecute those who are engaged in these instances of flag burning.
And what the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. No early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they use that language, by the way. Did they?
Okay, incitement.
Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail.
So it's an argument that burning a flag is yelling fire in a crowded theater. For more on this and other legal matters, please be joined by Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney, the Southern District of New York, that would be Manhattan, and contributing editor at National Review, also author of the bestseller Ball of Collusion, The Plot to Rig an Election and Destroy a Presidency. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Morning, Dan. How are you?
Good. So we're going to prosecute instances of flag burning where the flag burning was not political speech, but it was an instrument to incite a riot. Do you see a colorable distinction there?
Well, what I see as a category error, I think, would be the more precise way to put it. You can't criminalize flag burning because of the Supreme Court decision,
Right.
but incitement is already against the law,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So if you engage in a pattern of behavior that is a summons to imminent violence that's likely to happen and that you intend for it to happen, and in the course of that you burn a flag, that can be part of the incitement. It's not the fact that you can't prosecute someone solely for burning a flag. The reverse doesn't work in your favor. It's not like if I'm going to incite a crime, but in the middle of doing it, I'm going to burn a flag. That's not a defense to incitement. It's actually evidence in favor of incitement, but it's a different crime. So I think he wants acts of incitement that incorporate flag burning be prosecuted, and I'm all for prosecuting actual incitement crimes. Incitement's a tough proof for prosecutors because of the First Amendment protections. I'm one of the few federal prosecutors, or former ones now, being an old geezer, but like someone who actually prosecuted an incitement case. They're very tough, but it wouldn't be a defense to incitement that you burned the flag as part of it. That could help your case as a prosecutor.
Right. It's just this is just a political read on it, not a legal one. But I think this is, I think he's trying to incite the left to behave like they do in response to everything he does, which is to go out and burn flags and look like fools, look like anti-American fools on top of it, and just further do his work for him. That's what it seems to me. It's almost like talking about deploying the National Guard to Chicago, then saying, well, maybe we won't go if they don't want us. And now you have put two more Democrats in the national spotlight who basically throw up all over themselves every time they talk about this and sound completely tone deaf with respect to violent crime in what everybody knows is a city that has a big problem with violent crime and has for generations. I mean, so, hey, I tried to help. They didn't want it. They're carrying on about not wanting more police and about jail being racist. Brandon Johnson basically said that yesterday. I mean, and so they just do his work for him.
I agree with that, but I just kind of wish you do the other half of this equation. I have a soft spot in my heart for Chicago because I spent a lot of time there. And I felt the same way about my own city of New York, which is that I thought Republicans had a real opportunity to kind of bounce off the insane, woke, pro-criminal policies that caused crime to surge in those cities and build the party back again. And I just think what you need in Chicago, just like what we needed in New York in the 90s and what we could actually use again now, is a vibrant Republican alternative to the likes of Brandon Johnson. I mean, I think you know this better than I do, Dan, because you're much closer to it. But, I thought before Johnson won, it looked like Chicago was kind of throwing off the insanity and was going to at least try to elect a more moderate Democrat who would support the police. And then, of course, Johnson and his union pals got the vote out and won. But you need a Republican alternative. I don't think Democrat light is what's going to work.
Yeah, no, I mean,
in Chicago or anywhere else.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I've been saying that here for years as well. It's a source of unbelievable frustration, as I'm sure the prospect of Zoran Mamdani being the next mayor of New York City is for you.
Yep.
Development. Now, I know, I hate to bring this up because I know he's just over the moon about the Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift engagement. But there's news on Jim Comey. John Solomon over at Just the News reporting, months after he refused to charge Hillary during the 2016 election for using a private unauthorized server to transmit classified information, Then FBI Director Jim Comey's inner circle used personal email accounts to further a plan to make an unauthorized disclosure to journalists, according to newly declassified memos. The latest evidence that FBI agents on the front lines had serious concerns about illegal leaks and abuses of classified information involving major figures like Comey and Schiff and Clinton. Those investigations were thwarted, and there is evidence from gathered from Comey's former top lieutenants, Rybicki, and the general counsel, James Baker, that he authorized the classified information to the leak of it. No charges ever filed. And now there's more that they were back channeling on private email to essentially, consummate this sort of activity at FBI. And I just wonder if, sort of the picture that's coming into focus and the additional evidence that is being released, or indication of evidence that's being released from the declassifications going on, gets Comey into more perilous legal territory.
See, I think I don't want to be misunderstood saying this, because I think the last time I addressed this, I conveyed what I wanted to say incorrectly. I think it's the wrong way to look at it to say, do you think we can make criminal cases on this guy? The reason I'm hesitant addressing this is I talked about what Tulsi Gabbard was doing a few weeks ago, and I pointed out that a lot of what she was putting out was stuff that we had known. I had a lot of it in my book, which I wrote in 2018 and was published in 2019. So I think what's happening is the paper trail is catching up with what seemed obvious to a lot of us who were looking at this Russiagate stuff closely back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's important to have accountability on that. I think one of the things that ought to be looked at is, why are we learning this stuff now instead of years ago? Trump was president from 2017 through 2020, and the Republicans were in charge of Congress for at least a couple of those years. The fact that, this wasn't all uncovered through oversight and disclosures by the administration itself is a question. I'm not faulting Trump for that. I'm asking, why was his urge to put stuff out obviously thwarted the way that it was? And I think it's important that we have accountability on all this. I wouldn't have spent 2 years of my life writing a book about it otherwise. But I just think it's the wrong way to look at it, to say, are we finally going to nail these guys in the criminal justice system? Because, number one, even if it wasn't hard to make these cases, you have such profound statute of limitations problems at this point. You're not going to be able to make cases, even if you found evidence that you could actually prosecute. We're talking about stuff that happened, 8-9 years ago, when the federal statute of limitations is 5 years. But the other thing is, it's hard to indict public officials, because the mechanism in our system for addressing executive abuse has never been prosecutors in courts. It's Congress. And we've never gotten accountability on this. And it's important, historically speaking, that all of this come out in a comprehensible way. I don't think people should regard it as a failure if we get accountability for people who, by the way, don't have their jobs anymore. It's not like nothing happened to them. But if we get accountability, but we don't get indictments, I don't regard that as a failure, because I don't think and this is very frustrating for people to hear, because they just feel like people are getting away with abusive stuff they did. But, the way the system works, you try to keep people who will abuse their powers out of power by not giving them the jobs in the first place. That's what the vetting process is supposed to be for. And then if they abuse their powers, the important thing is for Congress to act and get them out of those jobs. It's often a pipe dream to hope to prosecute them.
What was your reaction to the FBI raid on John Bolton's house and the predicate seeming to be potentially illegal handling, either possession of and or handling of classified information?
Yeah, I don't buy it. I think it's look, if it was a one-off, maybe that's plausible. This is like 12 or more Trump political enemies that the administration, whether by executive orders or by Justice Department investigations or what have you, has gone after Trump's political enemies. I think he's playing with fire, frankly. My view, Dan, I know we've talked about this, but I think Trump is president because of lawfare.
Yeah.
I really, I said any number of times, and I turned out to be profoundly wrong about this, but I didn't think Trump could be elected because I thought he had a hard ceiling of 46 and he could never get over it, and it wouldn't be enough. And I'm convinced that what put him over the top is lawfare, in the sense that there's a lot of people, including people who aren't particularly sympathetic to Trump or admirers of Trump, who were really offended by what the Democrats did in exploiting the law enforcement and intelligence apparatus of the government against their political enemies. And they realized that if they could do it to a politically powerful billionaire, very influential guy like Trump, they could do it to anybody. And I think that really spooked people. And for Trump to repeat that rather than just realize that his retribution is he gets to be president and he gets to steer the country for the next 4 years, I think it's a big mistake.
Well, I think people are offended by a lot of things, including Kamala Harris. But you're right. The lawfare piece of it was super important, and it should have been. I mean, the American people were right to make that calculus. But it's a bit of a catch-22, because at the same time, we talked about this while it was going on. You're going to regret these precedents that you set. And when it boomerangs on you, what are you going to have to say? Trump is an authoritarian? Well, it was just like we saw with the gerrymandering case. The governor of the most gerrymandered state in the country, that would be Pritzker, providing quarter for fleeing Texas Democrats who don't want a map to be gerrymandered in their state. I mean, it's like so obviously ridiculous that you don't want people to do to you what you do to them. And, so it feels, I think, to a lot of people like it's a comeuppance, and one that is richly deserved. And I'm not saying that we want to go down this path. I'm just saying you can understand the disposition here.
Look, Rich Lowry and I talked extensively about this on our podcast yesterday. I could only, as I said, I could only imagine myself going into to President Trump in connection with Bolton, or in connection with Tish James, or someone like that, and saying, it's really bad. We shouldn't toss someone's house like this. And he's looking at me like they did in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing they did to Trump that I think is something that is a bridge too far and makes it very difficult for people like me to push the position I have, which is my position nevertheless, is that they not only tried to make him political roadkill, they tried to destroy him financially, including a family business that is an iconic family business in the East Coast that they built for, decades. And worst of all, they tried to take his children down with him, which was totally gratuitous. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be big fans of Eric and Don Jr. and the rest of them to say, these guys have never done anything but work for a living. They've never gotten themselves in any trouble. I may not agree with them on everything, but they clearly love the country. How it is that, what could be done to them was done to them, and you get all this fawning attention to the likes of Hunter Biden, who's a lowlife.
Right.
Is just, if you're Trump and you look at the world and you see this doesn't make any sense, I'm not in a position to make sense of it for him because it doesn't make sense to me either.
Well, and the additional piece of it is that, and if you don't respond in kind, then it will happen again. The only thing that they understand is political power and punishment. I mean, you have to inflict punishment, otherwise you're going to get recidivism. And I mean, I understand the dangerous path is going down. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just sort of describing that there has to, and this is your point about accountability, even if it's not under the color of criminal law, that there has to be some reckoning for people to say, okay, let's now, sort of, we've reset the table. Now let's leave it there. People, I don't think a lot of people are ready to walk away yet.
I think I worked in the criminal justice system for a very long time, and catharsis is a big part of it. People want something that they can say, okay, the bill's been paid.
Yeah.
In every case. And sometimes, if you look at, I lived through 9/11, 9/11 was carried out by the Al-Qaeda terrorists. We didn't have them to prosecute. There was some that were overseas and the rest of them were killed in the attack. People still needed catharsis. And as a result, they went after the FBI and they went after the CIA and all the people who were responsible for it. It's a natural human instinct that we want to see the bill paid. On the other hand, I don't really want to live in a world where I may not agree with stuff that like Pam Bondi's done or Cash is doing or Dan Bongino or these other guys, but I don't want to live in a world where the next Democratic administration hounds them for 4 to 8 years, which is going to happen based on, the number one rule of politics, which is what goes around comes around.
Yeah. Yeah. But just on Tish James and throw Adam Schiff in there as well. I mean, do you have a problem with criminal referrals if there is actually, and throw the Fed governor, Lisa Cook, in there too. Do you have a problem with referrals for crimes like mortgage fraud if there's an evidentiary basis?
Well, I'm not crazy about, Trump installs this guy, Bill Pulte, at the Federal Housing Administration. I don't know what he's doing about housing policy, but it seems like that outfit has become a database to do opposition research. Where people have committed evidence, where there's evidence of prosecutable crimes, I don't mind it getting referred. And look, they referred all kinds of stuff to the Justice Department when I was there. And in my experience, the Justice Department makes its own decisions about who to charge. Pulte's referred these cases. I don't think any of them has been charged by the Justice Department yet, including Tish James, who got referred like back in April. But if there's evidence of crimes, look, Tish James, what she did with Trump, taking a consumer protection statute and applying it like a fish out of water to a case involving sophisticated financial actors who do their own due diligence, and trying to turn that into a fraud case, and then having no fraud victims and telling the court, I don't think I have $250 million damage. I think it's $370 million, when she hadn't proved the cent. I mean, how could anybody be upset about if it turns out that she was cooking her books, that she gets comeuppance for that? Now, you got to do it within the statute of limitations and all that stuff. But who's going to shed a tear about that?
Not me. Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney, Southern District of New York, contributing editor, National Review, author of the bestseller Ball of Collusion, The Plot to Rig an Election and Destroy a Presidency. Andy, thanks as always. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dan.
Andy McCarthy joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
At Air Right Heating and Cooling, we know there's never a good time to be without AC in Chicagoland. If you can't remember the last time your AC was inspected, don't wait for it to fail during a heat wave. Get peace of mind by having Air Right take a look. Plus, AM 560 listeners get $56 off any service. Visit Air Right Heating and Cooling today at air-right.com. That's AIR-RITE.com. Air Right Heating and Cooling. Doing it right since 1959.